let's go over here and let's talk about the monthly economic report for July 2024. And those of you that don't know, so Angry Mustache joined us last month as well. He is on the CSM. He's been on the CSM for 2 years now. And he also does a write-up of the MER on Reddit every month. Do you do it for Reddit, Angry, or is it just a copy paste that you are doing from the Goo in Discord or something?
No, it's a thing I do for Reddit. Because I mean, there's really nothing secret about the MER or anything like that.
Yeah. And this month, unfortunately, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but CCP estimate is no longer with CCP. That is official now. So he was the one that was preparing the CCP, the MER in the past, and now I imagine someone else has taken over that task. But one big thing that that came out of that is, I think, one of his bigger ideas is the cut of the sales tax that now happened this month that we're going to be talking about. But overall, there was a lot of different things that happened this month. The big thing being blue loot being significantly lower than the month before, and that is as a result of changes by CCP. Then we have the market change, the transaction fees down. We have a massive active ISK delta of 141 trillion. That's the highest I can ever remember. And we also have mining down quite significantly. So yeah, let's jump into it. I'll click through the graphs, and Angry and also Crota, if you want to jump in whenever you want. But we'll start with the production versus destruction versus mining graph. And nothing really huge here. We are seeing production after it reached a high around May, around the expansion. It has been continuously going down. However, we know that this is in part due to the market price of several finished goods dropping. And that might explain some of it. And we talked about that last month. I don't think there's any other reasons why production would be significantly lower this month rather than last month from a null perspective, right, Angry?
I think it could be just related to Equinox being not as exciting as people were hoping for. So the rush to Skyhook and whatever all your stuff wouldn't exist if the fact that upgrading your space actually downgraded it.
Yeah. I think ever since the patch that we had, 2-3 weeks ago, I think now the alliances are more eager to update their space, but certainly uptake was slower than it was than probably anticipated by CCP. If we're looking at mining, I think mining, a lot of this, that's the yellow line right here, a lot of that has to do with Equinox specifically not delivering on the mining side. So I think people have adjusted now on the ratting side, but on the mining side, we are seeing a lot less coming out of nullsec in terms of asteroid mines, but also because of the changes that we saw to gas, it being removed from the bill of materials of a lot of faction subcaps. We're also seeing less gas being mined in nullsec and low sec specifically.
Yeah,
So
it's
no other surprises there.
primarily a low sec thing. I mean, not only is the gas less valuable by a third, like looks like people are mining about half as much as it was before. I think overall that change is a good change, but there's a compensating change that we pitched that didn't make it into the patch. So gas only got a usage reduction in pirate ships, but didn't get a usage increase elsewhere.
Yeah. So gas prices are down by about 30 to 40%, and we see that reflected in
I
the
think it's more than that.
mining.
I think if you look at Myco specifically, gas is down like 60% for some of them.
Yeah, Myco specifically is overall gas. If you include Wormhole gas, it's down 32%. But yeah, if you look at Myco specifically, even though it did bounce back this week, up until last week, it was down. It was down significantly. Probably 50% or more. Yeah, so that's this. I'm gonna jump to. This is the asteroid ore volume mined over time. So this is not value, this is volume. But you can see here, for example, the red area right here is clearly to be seen that there's less ore being mined in nullsec, and that's a direct effect of the Equinox expansion, right, Angry?
I don't think that's necessarily the Equinox expansion, so to say. It's lack of excitement over the Equinox expansion and the usual summer slump.
Aren't the ore anomalies significantly worse than before, though? The way they are right now?
Yes, but nobody's upgraded. People are still mining the legacy stuff.
Okay. I wouldn't say nobody is upgraded. I know at least of a few alliances that have upgraded, but it sounds like Goons haven't.
No, we've upgraded very little of our stuff.
Okay.
Well, I think even the word upgrade is wrong. We changed over very little of our stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So Futility 101 is clearly not happy with the patch here. I would disagree, Futility. I think at launch it was a big issue. I think CCP has moved in the right direction, and I think we'll continue to iterate. I wouldn't like, especially in mining. I think there's a long way to go because they haven't really fixed the issue with the mining anomalies. In terms of ratting, I think we are at par or better, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think the passive moon mining, the Metanox, has been taken up and is being reflected on quite significantly, at least, or quite positively. At least that's what, for example, Dark Shines played back to us in our interview last week. Gas you see here is completely gutted. This is not value, this is volume. So you can see here that we've seen, since the patch, we've seen significantly less being mined in both nullsec and especially lowsec, as Angry mentioned. And ice mostly unchanged, a little bit less than before. Was ice touched by Equinox? I don't think so, right, Angry?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think ice was not touched by Equinox.
Yeah. And then Moon Ore is pretty much unchanged. We haven't really seen the impact of Metanox yet. I think that's going to be seen in the next weeks and months.
Hopefully, but
Yeah.
Metanox data is just not in the MER right now.
Right, but you might see a response in terms of other Moon Ore. That has been replaced by Metanox, right? And I would expect it to make it into the MER sometime soon.
Yeah, that I think we would have to see because the thing about Metanox is they're not as good as Athenors. Like they're 40%. So the real good moons you wouldn't want to Metanox anyways because you're throwing away 60% of that moon. So I think the moons that we get Metanoxed are the marginal ones where they're maybe worth mining, maybe not worth mining. But if people don't have the man hours to mine them, then you might as well Metanox them.
Yeah, it's true, and it's also a different different game style, right? I mean, some people might be okay with metanoxing a moon rather than mining it because they don't mine it on principle, right? Because they don't want to.
The we do not sow types.
Yes, they exist. let's jump into my favorite graph, the ISK sinks and faucets. And on this one, you can't really see it that well, but we're going to stick on here for a few points. So one is the transaction tax is always every month the biggest ISK sink, right? But last month on the 25th of July, there was a surprise patch that reduced the sales tax from 8% to 4.5% unskilled. So almost halved, and it's obviously the same skilled, and not absolute but relative. And in your Reddit post, and I would agree with that, you calculated that difference to that it can be about 12 trillion a month in terms of an ISK sink that is not going to be happening in the future unless it is replaced by higher volume trades, and thereby we would have a higher absolute sink rather than the relative sink right now. But in the week, at least in that week that we had the sales relief, in the sales tax relief in the last week, we haven't seen a huge uptick in trade volume yet, as you also write, Angry.
Yeah. So the thing about this sort of is there was sort of like a master plan. So a while ago, there was sort of a plan to replace transaction tax with industry fees. But then it turned out that industry fees was transaction tax was just way too big for industries to actually rebalance it. So transaction fees remained high. And I'm just really not sure about this plan because what we saw is that there's not really so the point of lowering transaction fees, right, is to increase the velocity of money and encourage players to trade with each other. And we just haven't seen that because this amount of transaction fee change doesn't change player behavior. All it is just reducing the ISK sink.
Yeah. Unless, I think several things. One is the question: is this a permanent change or a temporary change? Because CCP
I don't
didn't
think it can be permanent. I don't.
Right? CCP didn't mention it.
Because you can't balance the economy like that. Like you need to sink ISK, and you need to in order to keep the ISK supply under control because the ISK supply is exploding from a bunch of very big sinks. Sorry, very big faucets. Like, wormholers are complaining about their nerf, but like, it's 5 trillion when this change alone is like 2.5 of those. So if they continue in next month, the wormhole change would have been offset by a factor of 2.5. The SCC base surcharge change would have been offset by a factor of 3. So this is not a sustainable change in the long term because it's just so much ISK that would have been sunk that isn't.
The way this could work, the only way this could work is if, this is going to lead to a lot more trading or a lot less vertical integration, a lot more trading along the supply chain for industry. This would lead to moving a lot of what is today sold in contracts to markets, because I think that's a big part of that.
I think
as
that's
well.
a more involved change, right? We've both talked about this, which is that in order to do that, what the CCP would need to do is set up different they would need to set up different categories of items with different sales taxes. Everything that's a finished good would need higher sales taxes. Everything that's that's a material component or intermediate would need lower sales taxes. But that requires programming time. I don't think CCP has that at the moment. So they did this less elegant change, which I think doesn't fulfill the goal.
Yeah, I think this can be regarded more as a test to see if there's any impact at all. Because if we're not going to see an impact in trade volume from this then I think they're going to revert it very, very quickly. If we do see an impact, they might give it a chance for longer. I don't think they know yet, because otherwise they would have indicated something in the notes. But I mean, we all know that they'd rather under communicate than over communicate. I do think, though, Angry, that there is something about contracts in here, right? Because today we're seeing such a huge part of the economy of trading happening outside of the market without any sales tax at all, or very, very little sales tax, and that is contracts. There is a point where sales tax is low enough for some of that contract business to be moved to the market, and thereby actually increasing the ISK sync. I just think for that to happen, there would have to be a communication campaign around this. This would have to be a much, much bigger deal than it is right now, which is one line item in the patch notes that a lot of people aren't even going to pay attention to. You don't think it's a change on contracts? Like none of this would, like, you think no change in sales tax would make some of the contract volume move over to the markets?
That I don't know. Contracts is a very arcane process, let's say. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing on here is the active ISK delta, which is absolutely massive, right? For those of you that don't know, so the active ISK delta that we see right here, if I zoom in here, right there, is 141 trillion this month. Let me put that in perspective. This is the active ISK delta over time, right, for the last 4 years. And you can see that this month at 141 trillion is the highest out of any of these last, 40 something periods, right? And what this is you have faucets that put ISK into the game, you have sinks that pull it out of the game, and you have the active ISK delta of people becoming inactive that have been playing their wallets after supposedly 3 months, is what CCP puts in the fine print. After 3 months, their wallets are taken out of the money supply, and that is reflected in the active ISK delta, plus bans, so GM actions. There could be also a lot of bans in there. Now, Angry, in your analysis on Reddit, what you were saying is that, hey, we had a lot of people return for Equinox because there was 7 days of free Omega, so you're going to have a lot of people coming back, checking it out, or maybe not even checking out, just claiming the 7-day Omega and, extracting some planets, whatever they do. And then they're going to leave again, right? It hasn't been 3 months, though. It's only been 6 weeks. But then I look at last year, and it's the same thing happening in July. So is it CCP straying from their definition of inactivity after 3 months? Or is it that the security team is just very, very active in July banning bots?
That I have no idea, because this is a earlier fall off than normal, right? Because normally I'm trying to remember, when did Uprising was also a June expansion, right?
Yeah, I think it was end of May. If you look at the positive active ISK delta, it was end of May. So it was a little earlier, and then we had the effect in July, which also doesn't make any sense, right? It should have been later, but that could be argued. But this going from June, like I looked it up. I mean, the 7-day free Omega was beginning of June, and in July we shouldn't have the immediate effect of those players leaving. So I honestly don't know. I looked. I also scoured. Did some research on people complaining about bans, and there was an uptick this month on people complaining about being banned for RMT. So it's possible that July is just the month that CCP focuses on it, but it's too big to be just people returning for Equinox. Futility is asking, Yeah, go ahead, Angry.
That I don't know.
Yeah. This utility is saying it might be 2 to 3 extremely wealthy people leaving. Yeah, possibly. But they must have met, like, I think by definition they must have left in like April or May. I mean, I don't know, but it's strange to me. I was gonna go with the ban explanation, but then I looked at last year and it's kind of the same in July. I think we have to wait till August to see what happens. But I might also ask CCP how and why they think this is happening. Let's see if we get an answer that we can actually use on stream though. Let's go back here and look at commodity faucets over time. I think this is one way of looking at it, but you actually send a graph through. Oh, here. Well, actually, before we go to your graphs, Angry, this is if you're wondering how the transaction tax is reflected, you can see here in the end of June. So you can see that the transaction tax every day is around $1 trillion, and then in the end of June, when they reduce it in the patch, it immediately almost halves. It drops by 40%, which makes sense in the context of it dropping from 8% to 4.5% unskilled. So this is clearly where you see the impact. Next month, we're going to have an entire month. If they keep it up for the entirety of August, we're going to have an entire month of the lower transaction tax. So we'll see where that goes. It could have an impact of 10 to 15 trillion over the entire month, or even more. Yeah, even more, right? It could be, if you look at it in the entire month, it could be
Yeah, the
20.
scale for the entire month is like 12
Yeah.
trillion.
Yeah, so that's massive. We'll see what happens. This month they didn't have an inflation problem because one, they had the massive active ISK delta, right? If you go to the money supply here, what you would see here on the money supply, if they didn't have it checked, so if it was completely unchecked, we would have seen a very sharp increase in money supply. Since it was only 1 week and it was counteracted by the massive active ISK delta, we did actually see a pretty significant reduction in ISK supply. But next month we shouldn't be seeing that same thing again. But we'll see.
Yeah, so the only reason that you can see here that the one that really counts is ISK velocity without contract flex related items, and that's stayed basically the same because of the because
Yeah, you're reading chat, Angry?
a bit.
Yeah, this right here, right? I mean, we look at this right here. There's no increase in the
Yeah.
velocity of ISK. So we
Well, actually,
don't actually, yeah.
wait. Where is this graph wrong? No, no, it's not. Okay, so I was just confused by the y-axis. Sorry, the x-axis. But yeah, I don't think I don't think the sales drop has not the sales tax drop has affected the velocity of ISK because that pink line is really what's important.
Yeah,
Overall velocity of ISK is affected too much by Plex sales.
it is. And you would have hoped, if you're a CCP and you're making a change, and again, it was only 1 week, right? It was only 1 week and with a pretty stealthy patch. I think if they made a bigger deal out of the market tax reduction, then it would have been, I think the impact would have been higher. So I really want to wait till August to make up to make a final verdict. But you would have hoped to see at least a little bit of a velocity of ISK increase, because if you have the taxes, you are encouraging people to trade more. I mean, that's got to happen. But then again, it's summer, player count is low. We'll see what happens in August. Hopefully, we'll see something.
I believe I sent you a graph.
Yeah. Let's do that. That's this graph right here, right?
No, the third one.
The third one. This one. This one.
Yeah, that one. So this one's I had to sort of clutch this one together because Microsoft Power BI is a well-functioning piece of software. But basically, what this shows, the line to look for is 0. This is stacked sinks and stacked faucets, and the overall balance sort of shows you
Yeah.
the flow of ISK between in this month daily between faucets which are above 0 and sinks which are below 0, and I still have to work on this one some more. But basically, um, you can sort of see the big downward slide starting around July 22. That's when they reduced the. I mean, the effect's
Here.
actually not as big because because I combined transaction and broker, and they didn't change broker,
Yeah, you
so
need
it's
to
not.
split that out. Yeah.
No, I didn't do it on purpose because they both happen at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's right. But they are basically the number 1 and number 2 or 3 sinks in the
Right,
game,
but
right? So if
for
you
this,
split out
yeah.
transaction tax, the impact would have been much larger. Yeah.
Oh well, the net impact, it wouldn't make a difference on net impact. It would just make it, at least for me, I think more clutter on the graph. So I combine them because they happen at the same time. But what you see is that the imbalance after they changed the imbalance between sinks and faucets got worse. That's why I think they can't sustain it for that long, even with uh, commodities falling because of wormholes.
Yeah, we'll
So
look at wormholes in a second here.
yeah, so that's my view on that.
By the way, they
So
don't all
we
happen
can
at
go
the
to
same time. On a sell order, they happen at the same time. On a buy order, you pay broker fee, but there's no sales tax.
yes, that I'll have to consider when I refine this for next month.
Yeah. Let's talk about wormholes. Yeah. The There was a change to wormholes where CCP was hoping to get more capital ships on grid and a little bit less blue loot in the pockets of wormholers or people farming wormholes, I should say. Now, according to this
Specific
graph,
wormholers.
specific
Wormholers.
wormholes, yeah,
They wanted more capitals and less roaching. So what roaching is, for people who are not familiar, is mass marauders, and they they move from hole to hole. Whereas what they want to encourage was capitals on grid by making it so that the escalation doesn't spawn unless there's a unless there's a capital ship. So what you see is this change reduced blue loot coming out of C5s, but did not really touch C6s, because C6s are where people run with capitals already, and C5s are where people don't run with capitals, but now they either have to accept less ISK per site, or they have to put a capital on grid. And the thing about wormholes is capitals take a lot of mass, marauders don't take a lot of mass. So instead of like 20 marauders being able to go into a hole, it's like 1 dread and a somewhat fewer marauders.
yeah.
So that's why you see the big impact in C5s and no impact in C6.
And the thing that you're contrasting here is that there's less blue loot, but there's similar levels of destruction. So you're saying, from your perspective, Angry, that that's a good thing, because what's the goal that CCP had with the change, assuming, is that they didn't want people not to run anything and not to run risk. They wanted just the payout to be lower and the risk level adjusted. And they
I would say that's
achieved it.
accurate. I would say
Yeah.
that's accurate. And if you look on the next one that I sent you, it'll show more evidence why.
Yep. I am opening it now. This one.
Yes, that one. So this shows the destruction of ships in wormholes by 3 categories: carriers, dreadnoughts, and marauders. Because you can really see the rise of marauders with the marauder change in late 2001, and that corresponded with the capital industry change in 2001 as well. So you see that before those two changes, people used to use dreads and wormholes for PvE and quite a bit because the meta, a viable meta was you take 3 dreads through a wormhole, and then because dreads were cheap, you just PvE with dreads. So that was the meta before. That was the meta before 2021. Sorry, 2021.
Mhm.
Then we had the Marauder buff. So you see this Marauders taking over everything.
Yeah.
Some Wormholes hate that and want Dres to return. And then you see that here, at the last part of 2024, you see this drop in Marauders and an increase in, and the start of increase in Dreadnoughts. Because now you have to get a Dreadnought on field to get the whole value of the site. So I think from this graph, CCP can interpret that their change has had the desired effect.
Yeah, and this is number of ships, right? This is not volumes. This is not value. So these, these 5. What is it? Is it 5 daily average losses? Yeah, 5 are worth more than 5 Marauders, obviously.
Yeah.
So this graph is a little bit misleading, right? Because you could look if you I mean, not misleading, but it gets your point across. But it would be interesting to also look at this in terms of ISK value, right? Because
that would be interesting. I let me see if I can do that right now. Give me a second.
But yeah, so in summary, if we're looking at if you were looking back at the MER and the end of this right here, you can see that the overall blue loot in wormholes is down to, what is it, 15 or something, down from, and especially C5 C6 is down to 11.5 from 18, 19, 20 in the high time. So we're seeing a 30 to 40% drop here in C5s, C6s. So that is a very, very significant impact. And in this current form, it enables them to do a tax cut. So Angry, you were talking about earlier this situation where they put a massive unchecked tax cut on the sales tax without any response or any results on the other, on any balancing effect on the other side. One thing that did happen last month was this, right? So we do have 4 or 5 trillion less here in blue loot, but in the long run, that is not going to counteract that 12 trillion or 15 trillion that we're going to see in the sync reduction of sales taxes. But there is a small balancing effect here. All right. Anything else we've missed? And feel free to show the graph if you want to, or send it to me if you have it. Otherwise, we can also look at it later in the show. Angry, however you want to do this.
So it's mislabeled, but this is showing cost instead of
Oh, there we go. Cool.
It's mislabeled, but this is now by cost instead of
Cool.
count. It didn't change that much because again,
yeah,
Marauders are still expensive ships, but the gap is just not as big as it was before.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, this is getting close, right? I mean, this is a little bit more extreme than the other graph, but the message is the same. I think you see a downward slope here, you see an upward slope here, but it's I think we need a month or two to really see the effect and whether it's lasting long. And probably I don't know, but they might iterate on this even further, right? I mean, this might not be the end of it. The CCP has been in an iteration mood lately, and not speaking from a, I honestly have no idea if they're going to, but they might. I think because they have been iterating not only on nullsec but also on wormholes changes. Anything else we've missed, Angry, or that you wanted to talk about regarding the MER?
I think that's all I have to say about it.
Cool. All right. then we're going to, I think, leave it at that. Let me have a quick look at my notes in terms of, yeah, I think we mentioned everything. And on this graph, one thing that I, before looking at the year before, right, the active ISK delta, one thing that I tried to figure out what happened in April. Like, was there something massive that happened in April? There was a very significant Plex sale in April, but a Plex sale, even if there was so many people participating or taking advantage of a Plex sale, that would mean that they would be extending their subscription for longer and not just coming back for 1 month and then leaving here. So I really don't think that has something to do with that. So we don't know if this is significant bot bans on the RMT side possibly, or whether it is CCP changing the definition of active ISK delta. But we'll find out, and I'll try to bring you an answer next week then. Cool. Angry, you want to stick around for the Pearl Abyss part, or up to you?
Definitely. I have less to say, but I'll ring in when there's something interesting to say.
Very good. All right, then we're going to leave this for the MER, and now we're going to jump over to Pearl Abyss earnings numbers. All right.